Alrighty, fellas and felines. Are there any like furry YouTubers that open up their videos with the greeting of "Hello, fellas and felines"? I feel like that's a freebie. If you're a furry YouTuber, a furry content creator looking for an intro, there you go. You can have that one. It is time for another reading update, another book report by your friendo Matt Jerko. Another full month has passed. Another 30 days have passed. And with those 30 days, plenty of reading time has passed. I've been continually productive when it comes to getting through books this year. 2023 has been a top-notch reading year so far, and we are just 4 months in. I'm enjoying that very much, but that also means that I'll have a lot to talk about and you have a lot of shit to listen to if you decide to click play on this video of mine. March had like 3 separate reading update videos because I had to split it. Not gonna happen this month, and I'm glad about that. This is just gonna be a 1 video thing. Everything is gonna be compressed and good to go this time. Books. Where to start? I guess at the beginning. Which is gonna be the only book here in this video that I'm not actually gonna be able to show physically. When I went to the library earlier this month, they had a presentation thing for all sorts of poetry books, and I decided spontaneously to just grab one of those and just give it a shot, see if it sticks or not. And one book in that like presentation thingy that they put up there spoke to me particularly in terms of its presentation and title, and that is this German poetry collection called Liebe in Zeiten, der Follower by Max Richard Leßmann. I chose this book, 1, because I liked the visual presentation of the cover art and it was fairly colorful inside as well. Can't show you this now, but I have a substitute for that in a second, for good reason. And also the title I really liked. Translating the title to English would be something like Love in Times of Followers. Speaking specifically about the term follower in relation to social media. So I grabbed this book, this little poetry collection, hoping, a little bit expecting maybe like poetry relating to our lives with modern technology and how we connect to social media and what that might do to us. You know, something about that subject matter. And to a degree that was in here as well, but that is not why the book was called that. That's not where the title actually came from. I only found that out when I actually opened the book to read, and the foreword, the introduction text mentioned this. This little poetry book is a collection of Instagram posts by a German artist that I never heard of. This isn't a collection of poetry that was specifically written to be printed. This is more like a novelty print for people that liked the author's Instagram post, where he has been doing like a little personal challenge for like 2 years or something of posting 1 short poem every day. The author, Max Richard Leßmann, is, I think, a musician in a band. So writing text is something he does for a living as well. And so his Instagram profile is like following that with these daily little poems. And that is all fine and dandy, but there's a significant difference depending on how you experience these poems. It's different if you see these poems on your social media feed in between all other things that you follow on there, or seeing them printed on dedicated paper in a book. It has a different effect. I think my approach to this was maybe the least effective way, because I didn't know this person. I didn't know this was like an Instagram thing. I never heard of his Instagram account, and I'm not genuinely a big fan of casual like social media poetry anyway. So when I actually got this physical poetry book, I expected a bit more. Most of these poems here very clearly are daily writings for social media, you know what I mean? There's lots of repetition in the themes, there isn't a lot of interesting wordplay at all, plenty of very mundane subjects. There is nothing really very memorable about this or anything to write home about. Most of them didn't really work for me. I thought this was rather boring, rather dull poetry for the most part. Every now and then there was a decent one that I liked. There was even like one of the lengthier ones, of the rare longer ones, that actually truly captured like a perspective on social media and in our lives, in our everyday lives, and how that like changes our relationships, which I enjoyed a decent amount, and like I said, was kind of what I was hoping for personally as well, judging from the title at least. But most of these were like, okay, not my brand of poetry. Not like all the power to Leßmann for doing this challenge. I mean, absolutely nothing wrong with that, both for the writer as well as the follower that enjoy it on social media. No shame there, but it just didn't work for me. It's not the kind of poetry that I care for. It didn't really impress me in any way. So this is actually the beauty, I guess, of this originating from social media. Even though I don't have the book anymore, I gave it back to the library long ago, I can still show you what it is, because it is on Instagram. Obviously it's gonna be all in German, so you're not actually gonna be understanding the poetry unless you do speak German, but this is just to give a little visual. This is this guy's Instagram. And these are all the daily poems. They are all just like a flat color background with a text. No, that's the whole shtick. Nothing wrong with that. Plenty of people enjoy that and follow this. And the book is literally just one page equals one of these posts, with the same visual makeup and everything. And that's just what that book is. Just a collection of these Instagram posts, straight up. Congratulations for him for getting his stuff printed and published successfully. That's cool. Yeah, you can be proud of that. But I really do think that this product, this book, this print, is more of a novelty item for people that like his social media activity than it is a strong, standalone book. Know what I mean? And that's really what it all boils down to for me. Now, to get away from the short form mediocrity, we're gonna go into long form awesomeness. This, coming right up, one of my new favorite books of all time, I would say. A true 10 out of 10 for me. I've always had a problem with committing to longer books. Most of the books I read are 300 pages or less. I've read a lot of very short books this year especially, and I really wanted to change that, so I decided to pick a longer book from my to read list, and given that we are going into spring, given that we had the Easter Bunny running around this month, I decided to read Watership Down by Richard Adams. I'm sure in English-speaking countries, especially probably in the UK, this book is quite well known. I don't know how far it reaches across the rest of the world, but I'm sure a lot of people know or have heard of like 1978 Watership Down animated movie that's based on this book, which is to give the vibe from that, you got this shit.
The field, it's covered with blood.
Funny little bunny adventures. And I liked that movie. I liked it already previously. I watched it like many years ago. And yeah, I was very curious about the book. I mean, it's an award-winning book anyway, so I had high expectations for these wholesome like bunny adventures or whatever, and it did not disappoint at all. But I gotta say, it had me laughing at the very first page already, because and this was a perfect introduction to this book. Award-winning book, among other things, the Guardian Children's Fiction Prize. So this is like an award-winning children's book. And then it literally starts the first page with a quote about bloody sacrifice and the stench of death or something. Like, that's how the book about rabbits starts. This children's book about rabbits. And it's such a good introduction. Watership Down is the story of a bunch of rabbits looking for a new home after their old warren gets destroyed, pretty much. And it's an adventure novel. You follow this group of rabbits around through the woods, all the like other creatures they encounter and all the dangers they evade, and it's written so well. There's so much variety here, which is also thanks to the author taking the actual natural behavior of real-life rabbits into account in every way. Like, the author did genuine research when writing this book, and that's reflected in this book, in how close to nature it is, even down to the gritty ugly parts of nature. Like, rabbits are a vulnerable animal. Death's around every corner for this animal, and this book is really taking that into account, and it's not flinching away from portraying that. These rabbits can die at any moment, and it's not pulling any punches when it comes to portraying these deaths as well. But it's not gratuitous or cheap. It still tells a really beautiful, in-depth, engaging story that I sometimes, when I read this, I sometimes called this, when talking to other people, like the Lord of Rings, but with rabbits, instead of like some magical hobbit creatures going through a fantasy world, having that sort of journey. Here we just follow a bunch of rabbits through a forest, and it's so fun. It was so good. And yeah, this book, this fairly lengthy book, like 450 pages or something, was my ebook copy, really takes its time with the individual adventures of these rabbits. And it gets emotional, it has great characters, it has a lot of variety in the exciting moments, there's some scary stuff. It's great. It's awesome. I loved this book. I really, really enjoyed this from beginning to end, like genuinely. The final chapter, during its like exciting climax, it had me grinning like an idiot while reading this in a cafe, because it was just so fun and engaging. It's such a good book. And I really want to read more books like this. I mean, books from the point of view of animals is interesting as all hell already. But then also having books about from the point of view of animals that, one, are so colorful and in-depth with their storytelling, and two, still stay so close to actual nature with all the gritty elements that come with it, that it's such a good mix, and it's almost perfectly showcased with Richard Adams's Watership Down. It's such a good book. Genuinely a 10 out of 10 read for me. I love this shit. Obviously, of course, after finishing the book, I also revisited the original animated movie, which is still a very good movie in its own regard, although at 90 minutes it is going through the story with a lot more briefness. I mean, the usual like book to movie adaptation stuff. The characters aren't as in depth. Some of the personalities of the characters are changed. Things that were significant elements or situations in the book are way less insignificant in the movie, or to completely lose their meaning in the movie. The movie is still a very nicely made animated movie in its own regard, and it still captures parts of the vibe from the book very well, though the full package obviously is in the book. That's where it's all there in full glory. And then, continuing from that, I had a buddy read going, a like casual buddy read that me and my friend had sort of planned for over a year, I believe. Like I think we originally wanted to read this together like 2022 or 21. Like, it's been a long while, it just never happened. But we finally had it done. We finally started this book and finished this book, and it was good. So shout out to Dylan. Dylan aka Butlet, a motherfucker that's never gonna watch this video because he doesn't give a shit, for good reason. But we read this together. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Another like award-winning classic, I guess. This one being a very well-known post-apocalyptic story about a father and a son stumbling through the dead nothingness that is the world. Winner of the Pulitzer Prize, it says on the cover. So yeah, it was pretty good. The Road famously also made into a movie, which I've only seen a minute ago. I had never seen the movie before the book. Dylan, my buddy, he already saw the movie before, like years ago probably. He already knew what the fuck was going on. I went into this book very much blind. I really only knew that this was a post-apocalyptic story about a father and a son stumbling through the nothingness that is left behind and trying to survive. That's really it. I think one of the most significant things about this book is that it is not painting this post-apocalyptic world as this exciting, epic tale of adventure or whatever. That's a popular way to go with apocalyptic stories. This one is not having any of that. This one is reveling in the misery and the coldness and the hopelessness of it all, like all throughout. This is a book where purposefully barely anything happens at all for some stretches of time, just to make clear how not great the situation is. I guess you could say it's a bit more on a realistic side in that. When the world burns up and everything goes to shit and like 99% of the population just vanishes, it's not gonna be a fun time. You're just gonna be walking through the cold, like, desert, trying to find like a can of beans to eat for the next 2 weeks, you know. It captures that very well. What's most interesting about this probably is, I mean, this is a character study pretty much, since you are spending like this entire book with these 2 people, mostly only these 2 people. Backstory and personalities are purposefully vague, but there are some themes that are super interesting. Mainly what I took from this, what I loved about this, was the father's sort of struggle and guilt about raising a child in this dead world, but never wanting to give up. But also the subject of death possibly being the better alternative to some situations. That is also a subject that is incorporated here. I mean, this book was a lot about life and death, about existence in general, and how it's not always... how there are arguments that living isn't always the best option, and the book is very hopeless, but it never loses the spark of hope. Even until the very end, it never loses the spark of hope that makes it all completely dreary and meaningless. And it also doesn't pull any punches when it comes to the true horror of living in a world where everybody is desperate and ready to take what they need at the expense of others. I really like this. This was good. The movie, like I said, I literally just finished the movie a few minutes ago before deciding to shoot this. The movie is good as well. As a product of its own, it's great. The production was really good. It also had very nice atmosphere, and it did successfully capture this dead world very well. Obviously, as any adaptation has, it does have some changes and some artistic liberties in how it tells the story. None of all I liked, but it's still a good... the movie is still a good story in its own regard. It's still a good production. So yeah, now that we talked about the value of life in a non-existent world, time to talk about something more lighthearted. Let's look at Japan and their magical girls to close up my monthly reading update. I apologize if the audio is weird for this one. This is a bit like impromptu because I'm on short notice. I gotta go soon to an event that's, I guess, related to the book that I'm gonna be talking about here. I'm gonna keep this short. And my niece is really into Sailor Moon right now. The whole franchise, like whatever iterations there are out there, like books, shows, whatever. And as part of that, among other things that she had on her wish list, among many other Sailor Moon things, she also had this manga on her wish list, which is named Codename Sailor V, Volume 1. Which is all about Sailor Venus before the whole Sailor Moon group were a thing. Apparently she was like the first Sailor magical girl hero or whatever of that group, and this is like a collection of stories about her solo adventures. And since my niece wanted this book and I decided to get it for her, among other stuff that I'm gonna be putting together now so I can leave in a second, I decided to use the few days that I had this lying around and just read it myself, see what the hell my niece is all about these days. And also, you know, I've watched Sailor Moon a little bit as a kid as well when it was on TV, mostly because My sister was a huge fan as well when we were young, and I mean, as a kid, you sometimes just watch whatever the fuck is on, and so if it's not Pokemon, it might as well be Sailor Moon, you know? And I do remember liking the Monster of the Week aspect of Sailor Moon back in the day. I wasn't a huge fan, but it wasn't the worst. And as I grew older and Sailor Moon stayed popular in one way or another, I mean, it is a very well-known, pretty much household name when it comes to like pop culture stuff. As I grew older, Sailor Moon, the franchise, kept being or becoming a weird mix of both surprisingly progressive themes, especially in regards to gender norms, in how some of the characters in Sailor Moon are like known for being non-conforming towards like conservative feminine values. I mean, there's a lesbian couple in the Sailor Moon franchise. There's this one Sailor Moon character that I don't remember the name of that is known for being more masculine in her appearance and her actions. I think there's even some nudges on like trans or like gender fluid identities that were already baked into the old Sailor Moon. Again, I haven't really deeply engaged with this stuff. It's just the things that I picked up here and there while growing up. But again, that's one thing, one part of Sailor Moon that there's a bit of a conversation piece sometimes when it comes to this hugely popular franchise, but also that is obviously contrasted by the extremely feminine, sometimes even feeling exploitative or male gazy in the depiction of these girls, although it is created by a woman, so I guess those terms don't truly fit the content, because while these things may still be happening, they come from a different perspective, out of a different source. But my point is that there's, from what I always gathered, this weird mix match of these, like, on the one hand, surprisingly progressive themes, on the other hand, some odd, potentially problematic depictions of femininity. While it does challenge gender norms and things like that in some ways, I always also thought that there were at the same time very conservative gender stereotypes that were just taken for granted in these books. Again, I guess you could say this kinda comes with the territory of the age group, since this is aimed very specifically at teen girls, and so things are generally simplified, so that comes with some stereotypes, especially concerning the life of teenage girls. Again, like that's subjects that you can have whole conversations about. But me as an outsider who just had little touching ground with the franchise, but always a little bit kind of wondered about that. Once my niece started to really get into the franchise, and I had this book lying around anyway, I kind of felt like I should just give it a look-see. Just maybe it answers some questions that I have, and like at the same time see what my niece is growing up with, you know? And so yeah, I read Codename V, Volume 1. Codename Sailor V, Volume 1. And my criticism or opinion about this whole thing doesn't necessarily mean much. This is a very casual opinion from somebody who doesn't even belong to the target audience at all. So this was just a curiosity thing for me, and I didn't love it. This book is basically a collection of individual stories that are, in the whole, connected, but they are very much written in a repetitive way, in a serialized way, because I don't know how mangas work, but they probably got originally released individual stories in like a magazine or something. I don't know how that works, but it very much makes the impression that that is the case, something like that. So each individual story has very repetitive elements that just like I said, when I watched the show as a kid, I liked the Monster of the Week aspect, but generally in this, every single story had a villain that did the same thing, just with a different
dressing. Like every single villain sucked energy from people and converted them to like brainwashed minions to fight for Sailor Venus, and that is it. Every time it's the same 2 steps, and I thought it was a bit disappointing, not gonna lie. Like the monster of the week aspect was sort of the only thing, or the thing that I was most looking forward to or expecting, and that wasn't given here. The stories otherwise are like, I mean, it's teen girl stories, and they deal very much with teen girl subjects. All subjects are completely valid in whatever media you want, especially for this target audience, right? I'm not complaining about that. It's just that I thought even for this medium and this target audience, it could have been written a bit more interestingly. I don't know. And like I said, the clash of progressiveness and conservativeness, or whatever you want to call it, regarding gender norms, gender in general, it is here. That was truly confirmed my feeling about that towards the franchise, at least in regard to this specific book. I don't know how it is in the rest of the franchise, obviously, but here, I mean, gender stereotypes are a constant subject throughout this book, and sometimes they are set up for Sailor Venus to break them and act and rebel against them. That's absolutely a thing at points, but at plenty of others, these gender stereotypes are completely taken for full and just regarded as the thing that exists, and it paints the stories accordingly. Maybe it's because I went into this with a little bit of a focus on that, but it did seem like a weird discrepancy between the 2 things. This flip-floppy writing about this subject, when it followed stereotypes and when it decided to rebel against it, you know, I don't know why it did this, why it went that way once and then the other way the other time. I'm not entirely sure where it was trying to go with that, because you could absolutely take Sailor Moon, the franchise, as an empowering feminine story about girls defending themselves, fighting for good and things like that. Obviously that's somewhat at the core of things, and you can also make that or include into that a celebration of femininity, including stereotypical feminine traits. I think to some degree that is the core of the whole franchise, and maybe I'm expecting too much, but again, I thought these 2 subjects aren't handled in the best way, and lead to awkward flip-floppy like tonal shifts. Also, another thing that was probably lost in translation, there's a story where they travel to Greece, and it is and multiple times they use Egyptian hieroglyphs to like illustrate Greece. And again, either there was a joke that was lost in translation, or it was a genuine weird mistake. I saw other reviews online mention that too. I don't know what the fuck was up with that, but yeah. That was my curious little foray in this Sailor Moon spin-off prequel manga that I got for my niece, that I'm gonna be getting over there at the birthday party. I didn't entirely hate it, but I also didn't like it much. Again, I'm not the target audience at all, and I would have never read this if it wasn't like for this coincidental circumstance. There certainly was things that kids could read, and not everything a kid reads has to be high art, full of meaningful commentary or whatever. Obviously, sometimes it's just fine to read entertaining trash, and if that is it, then if that is what it is for my niece or whatever, completely fine, whatever. That's my Sailor Moon discussion. I'm gonna get this to the kid that actually likes this stuff. Bye bye.